Good to have with us Randall Franks. And I know many of you, most of you recognize Officer Randy Good from the Heat of the Night series, but Randall Franks, we're going to talk about Heat of the Night in a moment. But in introducing you, let me say I looked at your resume, and is there anything you haven't done that you want to do in life? Man, you have done it all.
I've been greatly blessed for a lot of doors opening for me, Robert. And I imagine there's a few things yet that I hope to accomplish. So we'll see what God has in store.
It is going to be interesting to find out what that might be because you've written books, you've written songs, you've written television scripts, movie scripts. You've been in television, you've recorded songs, you play instruments, you write stories, and you're even, I think, involved in politics as well at the city level, are you not?
That's right. I'm in my 11th year serving as a city council member in my hometown. And it's a great blessing. I mean, I really enjoy the time that I get to serve locally. And, you know, at the city level, the politics is more, it's more of a friendship because you're mainly dealing with potholes and barking dogs and trying to move a city's economic development forward, as well as trying to work with your entire community to develop a vision to where your city wants to be in so many years. So that's what I've enjoyed in the service aspect. Of course, you still have to go up and deal at the state and federal level to try to get you a little funding to help out, to get all the things that you want to do and that your residents want done accomplished.
With all these different items on your resume, though, if you had to narrow it down to one of, or two that you really just don't think you could live without, I mean, what is the thing you enjoy doing most?
Standing on stage performing in front of a live audience. That has always been, since I was a child, a desire. In fact, I was writing up a grant application just a little while ago, and that exact question was asked of me of how I got started in the business. And it was watching television, obviously, in our generation. You know, I was watching the Beverly Hillbillies and seeing Flatt and Scruggs. I was watching the Andy Griffith Show and seeing the Dillards as the
Hmm.
Darlings, and so many other Appalachian or country music performers who were going and appearing nationwide and worldwide as entertainers. And I, even as a kid, I said to my mother, I said, I want to do what they do. And that has been my desire since I was a little kid. And it's amazing how God listens to the wishes of our heart, because those words that that little boy uttered, how could you have ever imagined? I couldn't, that a boy raised in Georgia could grow up and become a network television performer, reach that goal of doing like Flatt and Scruggs and playing music worldwide on network television, in addition to being an actor, which was something I never really even dreamed of being. But those things don't happen just by accident. I think God places the steps in front of us and hopes that we take them. And by doing that, so many doors opened. Those hopes and words that were shared as a kid, I think the good Lord heard those. And He's heard many along the way, whether they were uttered in prayers or simply just the thoughts of what we share to ourselves and not even to other people of what can I do for you, Lord? Show me the way. So very blessed in that respect.
Tell us how you go from a child performer, because it's my understanding that even as a child, you had put together bands, so you were playing music at a very early age. How do you make that transition? How did it happen that you became child performer playing an instrument and singing to becoming an actor with an infamous actor, Carol O'Connor, and on Heat of the Night?
It really all began with as I said, that aspiration that was given to me by television, early days of television watching. As a kid, and I shared this some in my writings, but I was a very sickly kid, and I couldn't go out and play. You know, so I was sort of stuck in the house. So television and old Hollywood, golden era Hollywood movies were my rescue from just being trapped. The opportunity came along with the music, and I saw that as an outlet for me. And when I was about eighth grade, not eighth grade, when I was about 8 years old, an elementary school teacher came into a room with a fiddle in hand, violin, and played and wanted the kids to obviously sign up to learn to play the violin. Well, I had saw my great uncle Tom play the fiddle. He learned from my great grandfather at family reunions. That's what I wanted to do. I really didn't want to be a violinist, but this was the shortest route to get there. So I signed up to play violin. I always called it the old bait and switch, because when he came in the elementary school room, he played a fiddle tune. He played the Orange Blossom Special. But then I signed up and I got to learn how to play Beethoven and Brahms and Bach and Mozart. And eventually, when I grasped enough of the technique, I was able to go out and find fiddle players who then taught me how to play Orange Blossom Special and so many of the other tunes. Of course, in our days, recordings and albums. How many times have I picked up the arm of a record player, putting it back, so that I could learn a particular lick played by Kenny Baker or Chubby Wise or one of the other great fiddle players, Tommy Jackson, that were so well recorded and permeated the sounds that really made my heart sing. But how I got from that point, I saw that there was an opportunity among the young people in those classical music classes across our region. There were many of them studying under Dr. Greiser. Many of them loved traditional bluegrass, country, Southern gospel music. I said, okay, I've got all of these young musicians. We started gathering the key ones together and having jam sessions. Every Friday night, we would alternate parents' homes. Of course, our home seemed to be the home base. We would invite in early country music stars who were native to or in Atlanta area, who would come and actually play along with us. They would sing with us, teach us about what they did, and just inspire us. Eventually, over a period of a couple of years, those jam sessions became, well, let's create a group. And we went from there. And we had over 25 young people in the history of the group. The name of the group was the Peachtree Pickers. And starting, the youngest age member was 8. I was 13. And we grew up together, and we started playing flea markets and gospel music singings and bluegrass festivals and supermarket openings and everything in between. We're blessed with some wonderful parents. Everyone in the group had some great parents who supported what they did. But needless to say, my mom and dad had to carry the bulk of the effort, Pearl and Floyd Franks, and they became our managers behind the scenes. They opened doors. They helped me to bring the group to the point that we were visible by national artists. And one day, Bill Monroe happened to see me and started taking an interest in my work and in the group's work. And he arranged for us to come and perform for the Grand Ole Opry. And that started our national recognition. Now, we had already, by that time, we'd already managed to get our own television series that we were appearing on, or a place in a television series called the Country Kids TV series. It was broadcast around the world. And so we would travel out to Dallas, Texas to film the show. And it was broadcast. It was early cable days, but it was still broadcast in countries around the world. And it was sort of like a kid's hee-haw. So all of this was going along there in the early 1980s. And we were just having a wonderful time. The Opry invited us. There weren't many routes to become a star in those days. As you know, you could get lucky. You might record a song, you get it out on radio, somebody likes it. It gets a lot of airplay, but that wasn't highly likely. The last youth before us who had been successful in getting a record played was Tanya Tucker. And that was about 1972, I believe, with Delta Dawn. So there weren't many routes for us. So the Grand Ole Opry became the route for our group. Country music accepted us. that very first year, we were placed alongside Lee Greenwood, Barbara Mandrell, Alabama, as far as in the trade publications, and gave us a great launch into country music as a youth bluegrass group, essentially. And I was blessed to lead the bunch. And we just kept going and kept playing and doing more shows and more television appearances. By 1987, most of our young people had decided, well, it's time to go to college or go their own way. That was when we sort of took a different direction with the group, and I started becoming totally the front man, and I had a band. I still call them Peachtree Pickers, but even blessings was even the Opry kept me around, even despite the fact that we sort of weren't exactly the same from a musical standpoint. They still invited Randall Franks to come back and perform for the Grand Ole Opry, and thankfully that relationship still continues after all these years. So as far as the jump to television, once again, the recognition of being a music performer allowed me to start getting the attention of some casting directors. During that time in 87, 88, I actually started working. I said, well, I think it's time for me to do some acting. I'd really like to learn more about it because I was getting interested at that time. So I studied, I took classes, I started working with acting coaches as well as teachers. And I was blessed to have the interest of a few casting directors, and was cast in a musical role in a film called Desperate for Love for CBS alongside Brian Bloom, Christian Slater, Veronica Cartwright, Tammy Lauren, wonderful youth cast, a lot of other great people. Benji Wilhoit, another talented young actor from Georgia, was featured in it. And it was just my musical debut on television. And within just a short period after that, thankfully, the folks there liked me and encouraged me to go to In the Heat of the Night when they started doing that show in Georgia. And once again, God opened some doors. And so that's sort of how we made the jump. And then I was blessed to have many more successes along the way in various music genres, whether it was Southern Gospel with our 1990 top selling album, Handshakes and Smiles in Southern. As you notice, we're under attack. Probably heard that.
I did hear that.
There's some thunder in our community right now, so I better make sure I'm saying the right thing. God is listening. But in 1990, we had a wonderful success with Handshakes and Smiles, and the singles from that, working with the Benson Company, getting it out to radio, and that charted for us both for Southern Gospel and at that time what we titled Christian music. So I was the first bluegrass artist to cross over into the top country Christian music sales charts back in 1990, which was amazing to me, to be honest. It's always a blessing to get your music played, but it's especially nice when people like it so much they go out to the stores and buy it. Of course, now they download it, but back then you had to get them to the record store.
Well, it sounds like life for you has almost been like a domino effect, in that after the music, you realized and got exposed maybe to some acting, and you enjoyed the acting opening other doors. And I see that you've written books now. Tell us about the Encourager series that you've written.
Well, a few years ago, I came to the realization, just like we were talking about, obviously giving God the credit for the doors that opened, but there were a lot of people holding those doors along the way. And holding them open for me. There were many people who, both in just everyday life, actors, entertainers, who, as I look back, it may have just been brief relationships with these people, but they gave me some important advice, or they set up a situation that then created those dominoes that you're talking about. And I wanted to pay homage to those people. Some of them are people that everybody would recognize. Some of them were stars in their region or their own right, and some of them are just everyday folks who nobody would know unless they read the book. But it has been such, well, just like the gentleman I mentioned, Dr. Greiser. I feature him, wonderful encourager. But really, his impact was on his family and his students. And I was blessed to be one of those students. So he made a huge difference in my life, as well as, I mentioned the golden era of Hollywood. One of the early stars that impacted me was, well, actually two of them was a duo, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby.
Mm-hmm.
I watched so many road movies when I was a kid. I could say the jokes just off the top of my head in those days. But it was a pleasure for me. As a teenager, Bob Hope came into my life and actually became an encourager. And he liked my fiddle play. I could have never imagined that, someone of that level would have cared about what I was doing, but he did, and he made it a point to make sure I knew it. So I feature him in the first volume of the book. In the second volume, we see features on a lot of the bluegrass and gospel stars who've been part of my life, from Bill Monroe to Ralph Stanley to Jimmy Martin to Chubby Wise. We see gospel singers like in the latest volume, Encouragers 3, which is the latest volume. I've got Kieran Peck, the Watkins family. The Marksman Quartet are featured in the first volume, as well as the Lewis family. I sort of did the collection somewhat chronologically. A lot of the early influencers are in the first volume, the middle influencers are in the second, and the more later influences are in the third volume. And each volume also features the unique aspect of what I call moments in time. So there are hundreds and hundreds of photographs. For instance, like here's Lou Hildreth, who was a wonderful, wonderful encourager to me in my career in life. For Southern Gospel Music Hall of Fame, as well as so many others that are featured, just hundreds of pictures. If you're a fan of In the Heat of the Night, which I know some of your listeners probably are, there's a wonderful section in the book that highlight photographs and stories about my co-stars, from Alan Autry to David Hart, and so many others. I know David is from down around Mariana and grew up there. So wonderful, wonderful gentleman that I worked with who played Parker on the show. So, and then stories of other stars. Sonny Schroyer from the Dukes of Hazzard, James Doohan from Star Trek, Sheb Woolley from Rawhide, so many others. Just sometimes we just come into each other's life and spend a few months together, maybe working on a film, maybe working on some appearances together, and then we go on about our business. But everybody tends to leave a little something behind. That's what I wanted to share in this book, in these series of books, with the message that God sends people into our lives almost each and every day that He asks us to encourage in some way. It's up to us to figure out who they are and how we can be God's servants in those situations.
Well, Randall Franks, I may need to do a series of interviews with you to cover everything. There's so many other things I'd like to cover that you have done and do in your life. So I'm going to go ahead and extend off the cuff an invitation to do this again, because I really would like to hear much more. Where is Randall Franks headed in the next 3 years, 5 years? I mean, more writing, more music, more film, or some of all?
I'm a little of all. I have a new movie coming out that'll be, I'm told, depending on this situation we're in, it was expected to come out in late 2020. It's a movie called The Cricket's Dance, and I play a character from the 1840s in that film. We filmed it a few months back. So obviously that'll be coming out. I'll be helping promote that, as well as I do have another book, which is at the editors, which I look forward to coming out. I'm not sure exactly what the schedule on that one is, but I would say by 2021 it'll be out, called Frankly Speaking, Thoughts on This and That. So it'll be a mixture of things. More music. I'm working very hard to broaden our audience. When I started in the business, I came to the realization, especially in Southern gospel and bluegrass music, a lot of times artists really didn't hit their stride until they were older. You know, many acts didn't even become stars until they were past a certain age. In fact, it used to be that in television, but something flipped a few years back, and now you've got to be a teen or a 20 to be a star, you know, to become a star.
Mhm.
But in the old days, you had to work until your 40s before somebody would give you a television show. I always hope, though, you know, as you mentioned, I've got a number of television scripts and movies. I hope we can get some of those running off the ground and where folks will enjoy them. Got a murder mystery out. If folks enjoy those kind of things, they can find that on our website as well. It's called The Badger and Old Guitar. It was actually a script I wrote for a movie that we turned into a book. So a lot of hopes, still a lot of dreams. God has a lot of things in store. I'm just staying on ready and hoping before long, when everything gets opened back up, we'll be out there entertaining once again in front of the nice folks who listen to your radio station and also who come to see us in concert. I really thank you, Robert, for taking the time. Folks can visit randallfranks.com. They can find me on Twitter at Randall Franks. They can find me on Facebook, Randall Franks /actor, director, entertainer. They can like that page. I've got a YouTube channel, Randall Franks TV. Come and visit us over there. You'll find music. You'll find all kinds of things to entertain you. Please come and join me. I'm here. I'd love for you to be.
And to get your books, go to randallfranks.com as well.
Certainly, you can go to randallfranks.com. You can go to the store and find all the most recent things. But if you go on the main page, scroll down to the bottom, I've got a special right now on the latest book, the Encouragers 3 book. I've got this available with one of my latest movies on DVD, Decision. When that runs out, I'm replacing it with Solomon Bunch, another one of my movies. And they'll also get a copy of my God's Children CD. So you'll get 3 different pieces of product for one low price. Just go over there to randallfranks.com, scroll down to the bottom, or visit us in the store. Either one. If you're a downloader and want to download music, go to nimbit.com/RandallFranks. That's Nimbit, NIMBIT.com/RandallFranks. You'll find many of my albums to download.
Randall Franks, it has been very great to have you as our guest. An honor. We look forward to another opportunity to sit and talk.
It'd be my pleasure, Robert. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time right here